I can tell you a story about how I worked and then didn't work with Drake, if you're interested. I said to myself, do I really think Drake is going to make it? He's a television star. The only other television guy that ever made it as a music guy was Will Smith. Is Drake really Will Smith?
I'm here with Drake. He is nominated Breakthrough Artist tonight from Toronto to Hollywood, man.
There you go.
Drizzy, Drake.
Started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the bottom, now my whole team here.
Drake has become an international star. He's transcended the city. But what really is important, the city is very much a part of his life. And if you listen to his songs, you can see that feeling for the city. Drake is Toronto. Toronto is Drake. And people recognize that internationally, all around the world. The two are synonymous. He's a great ambassador for the city.
The power of hip hop, you got to, on a whole other note, is the power of hip hop. Nothing's going to put your city on the map and in the forefront than a hot rapper. You got one guy who is rapping. He's truly the hottest dude in the game. There is no tourism board. There is no commercial. There's nothing you could do better for your city to make the world turn around and go, oh, it is what it is. And I mean, that's just a hot rapper. The number one dude in the game. Maybe City Hall should all have a little, you know what I'm saying? Hip hop division. You know what I'm saying? You got Parks and Rec, Waste Management, hip hop and rappers. It's a good idea.
How I met Drake was from him coming on Flow and then him being like, hey, I got some music for you. And then the second I heard his music, I'm like, it was incredible. And from then I knew he was gonna be a star. But to answer your question, he put me on his MySpace top 8, and I literally got 250 messages a day.
Drake and the connection with the rappers, and I think the synergies between hip hop and athletics, or basketball in particular, it's becoming the urban culture is hip hop and sports.
Drake has always been a humble guy and shows a lot of love, and I've worked with him on, Replacement Girl, Successful, 5 a.m. Toronto, Marvin's Room. The list goes on and on. With the big video that I've done was where all the casting director for was Starting from the Bottom, and that video was him with the banner by the highway. Like, no one has done that before, and he just did something out of the box, and that video put Toronto on the map.
So we had Drake here. He's a popular guest. In fact, they come specifically to sit at our table just here beside you. And it's where he shot the cover of his album. And I think people come to sort of recreate that shot. So Drake actually came that evening and very late into the wee hours and shot that album cover here. He has mentioned us in his songs. We're honored. I think he really helped us to have a young crowd come on into this restaurant.
The success of someone like Drake, for example, who, that wasn't even a mixtape. That was like an album to me. You know what I mean? He's also a product of sort of that newer generation that was familiar with the internet and sort of how to utilize it in a way that's, to get the word out there. You know what I mean? I think that changed the game a lot, especially in this city.
you know, he's played a positive role. He's helped us, you know, reach masses that we wouldn't have been able to obtain just by ourselves. He's obviously the biggest artist in the world right now. Having his support in this city especially is crucial. I think for any movement to have the support of your city, but to have the support of, you know, someone who's almost, I guess you can say, looked at as like the king of Toronto right now. You know, he's helped push Toronto to a whole new level.
It made a lot of people from outside of Canada look over here. It allowed people to say like, hey, what else is going on over there? Like Drake has reached like epic proportions. But I think I'm also a strong believer that he's reached epic proportions because A, he's incredibly talented. B, he works hard. He's got an excellent team around him. And I think also at the fact that he's a nice guy, like straight up, like he's a super nice dude.
I would say Drake has definitely shined a lot of light on the city. I myself, I respect his music. I think it's cool. I love it. I respect what he's done. Kind of use Drake as an example. He's done his thing and done it to the max, but use that as an example, not as something that everybody bandwagons and follows all the way to the end. You know what I mean? Use that in terms of, okay, we can do this too, whether we're running a art business or whether we're running a car dealership or whatever we're doing, we can maximize it in our way.
What's dope about Toronto now is like there's a lot of validated reference points. One of the biggest superstars in hip hop, Drake, is a huge concrete reference point for young kids to look up to in the urban or hip hop community, you know?
And I think it's maybe because of the success of someone like Drake and The Weeknd, who don't sound like Americans. They sound like Toronto to me. They write about what they know, they write about where they came up. And so I see a much greater confidence in our students in the last few years in terms of being confident to write about who they are and where they're from.
When I went to college, that was kind of around the same time Drake dropped. And I just remember there being a difference. You know, people were excited about him. They were like, who's this new artist? He's from Toronto. People never really knew what Toronto was about. And me being somebody from Toronto, when I went out to the States, that was a little different for me because I'd always kind of been, you know, closed in about where I was from. I wasn't always talking about it, but now that I was telling people I was from Toronto, they were interested because they had already heard, oh, there's this new rapper from Toronto named Drake. You know, what's the city like? You know, they hear him talking about things and people start wondering things. And I think it's literally affected the whole city now. Like everybody's, at least, you know, the generation I'm coming up in, everybody's proud to be from Toronto. You know, everybody's talking about the Six. They're wearing a lot of Toronto gear. You got, you know, where before they were wearing a lot of, you know, Yankee hats. A lot of people took on a New York culture. I feel like now we got a Toronto culture out here.
What it has done also too is like with his success, I feel like it showed a lot of people that it didn't matter. Like it didn't matter where you were from. Like, you know what I mean? If your shit was hot, your shit was hot. And this younger generation, like I don't think they're as judgmental. Well, if I look at my generation compared to my nieces or my nephew's generation, like who absolutely love Drake. Doesn't matter where they're from.
The first time I heard the song Successful, I knew right then and there was something special to this artist. The song went on to our countdown and it was #1 for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And people were calling to the station like, you know, who is this? You know, it sounded that good even to them. And I think it was like maybe 2010, the OVO Fest. And Canada had always seen a few major artists come through. But Drake came out on stage, and who he brought out on stage with him? A slew of A-listers. He had Rick Ross, he had Jay-Z, he had Eminem, he had Bun B, he had Young Jeezy, had Fabulous. And they say Beyonce was backstage because she was, you know, there with Jay-Z. And so for Canadian audience, they all had to pick their mouth above the ground because I don't think they've ever seen a show that featured that many top-list, A-list, you know, American artists, and Drake made that happen. And so that bar got raised so high that it seems like after that, a lot of Canadian artists just stopped trying, you know, just changed courses, went to find jobs or something, I don't know. And it was just like, it got real quiet. And the only Canadian artists you would hear about would be the ones that Drake was co-signing as he came out, with P-Rang and The Weeknd and guys like that. But it was an amazing, and I've always wondered, like, you know, what effect did Drake have on Toronto? Toronto's never had a hip-hop artist that large to go into the American audience and dominate, and still dominating the charts, movies, TV shows, specials, tours. I mean, you name it, he can claim it right now.
So as far as my personal experience with Drake, he was working with an artist that I was also working with. He worked on a song, it was called Change You. produced by Narcotics. They were a production team based out of New York, and they were working with a local singer, Jenna Garcia. I remember he came through. It was just him and the manager, friend slash manager guy, and you know, just the two of them, super low key, super humble, really nice guy. So he put up the mic, and I remember he went in, and it was like, I think he did like 2 or 3 takes or something, and they were all really good. Like, I remember thinking, shit, this guy's good, man. Like, this is really good. And but then, you know, and then he came out of the booth, and that was it. And you know, to be perfectly honest, that's probably why I'm not a label executive. I was like, I would never have seen, you know, where he was then and where he's at now. Like that's like, you know, a 1 in a million, 1 in a billion type thing. But I do remember thinking that he was just wickedly talented. So that was my brief experience sort of before he blew up. So I don't go around telling people, yeah, I work with Drake, you know, because that'd be pretty douchey. But
so I did. It is true. I did represent Drake for a very short time, and then he fired me. And this is the story. I had met him initially because I played hockey with someone who was quasi-related to his uncle. Drake was always very close with his uncle, and I became the lawyer for his uncle's company. And Drake was working on TV, Degrassi, and he had decided to do some music, and his uncle brought him in to see me. And to be perfectly honest, Drake and I got along great. We went to a couple of record companies. He played me his Trey song track, and it was great. And we were getting along great. I didn't get along great with his uncle, though. He had his own ideas on how Drake should be presented in the world, and you know, for better or worse, I just didn't agree with it. And I thought that his involvement was to the detriment of Drake. And I remember vividly sitting at my desk, completely frustrated with the uncle, and thinking, man, I'm just going to have to tell this uncle he's going to have to sit, and he's not going to be happy about it, and he's going to tell Drake, and blood is thicker than water, so Drake will fire me if I tell the uncle this. But I felt like I really needed to say it, because if he was going to continue, I didn't think that I was going to be able to properly represent Drake. And then my moment of truth came. I said to myself, do I really think Drake is going to make it? He's a television star. The only other television guy that ever made it as a music guy was Will Smith. Is Drake really Will Smith? I figured I'd take my chances. So I called up, his uncle called me, and I said, listen, this isn't working. You can't do this. You can't do that. And, you know, we got into a little bit of an argument, and sure enough, about 20 minutes later, I got a text from Drake saying, you can't talk to my uncle like that. We're done. And I was like, I knew it was coming, and I actually respected Drake for doing that, because I thought it was cool that blood was thicker than water. And I moved on, and 2 years later, Drake was the biggest artist in the world, and I'm the biggest fool on the planet. So that's it. So that's okay. Some people think I'm silly for telling it because it makes me sound weak, but I think it's a funny story, and there haven't been any tag days at Sandra Shalinsky's house, so we're all good, and so is Drake, and I wish him the best of luck.